Hello people, it's Gino here from RealEverydayEnglish.com. Today I have a very special guest on the channel. He's an old school friend of mine who is doing some absolutely amazing things in our local community with regard to, in particular, men's mental health, because we have a situation in the UK. I'm assuming that the situation is the same in the rest of the world, where there is an incredibly high suicide rate among young men. So this inspired my friend to start an organisation called Place to Place. And in a second, I'm going to cut to a recorded Skype call between me and Peter, with him speaking about his concept in Place to Place and how he is now planning to try and expand it into different countries. Before we jump into the Skype call between myself and Peter, I just want to say that the audio on my side of the call is a little bit quiet, but Peter's is perfect, so you should be okay listening to it and understanding. And also, I'm going to be displaying Peter's contact details, email address, on the bottom of the screen at the end of the call, so that any of you guys who are interested in initiating this same conversation in your own communities can get in touch with Peter directly, and as he said, he'll send you a kit, a football kit, and so on and so forth. So here we go. Enjoy the chat.
Pete, it's a pleasure to have you. How are you doing, my friend?
Hi, mate. Thank you very much for having me. I'm good. Just getting over the end of COVID symptoms. I've had COVID symptoms full on for the last few days. So, as I said to you before, I've got a few bags under the eyes, and I'd say a couple of days of headaches, and just basically feeling hungover is the best way to describe it. So, but feeling much better today.
Okay, I'm glad you're improving. Hopefully it doesn't transmit through Skype. So. But as you were saying before, a lot of people you spoke to this week seem to have come down with it, so maybe there is something in that.
Yeah, it's like I say, 5G. I'm suspicious of the 5G all along.
Yeah, we're certainly in no shortage of conspiracy theories at this moment in time. Certainly not. Okay, so let's dive in today's topic. Why don't you start us from the beginning with regard to Place to Place? What inspired you to start it? How you got the ball rolling and brought it into existence, and where you find yourself today?
So, yeah, good question. Place to Place is basically a football club for fellas facing a challenging circumstance. Currently today, as we stand, we've got about 128 guys that are playing every Thursday night in various different five-a-side teams, basically. It didn't always start as a football club. What it started as very, very early doors was a memorial cycle to my friend, a friend that obviously we had in common. And the idea really was that cycle. I was trying to raise a little bit of awareness about men's mental health in the community, but very much it was about my own dealing with the circumstance and then losing a dear friend. So we cycled from Wigan through to Paris over 10 days, and it was a regret that my friend had asked me a few times to join him on cycling, and it wasn't really anything I was interested in cycling at all. But it's a bit of a regret that if I'd have joined him on a cycle, he might have opened up about some of the demons that he had maybe. And he'd always talked about doing kind of tower to tower, Blackpool Tower to Paris. So with the last conversation I had, pretty much was at the DW. We decided to go from the DW Stadium at Wigan through to the Eiffel Tower. And then one of the things that happened through that period was, like with anything that you do that's like kind of public like this, part of the reason that you're making it public is to draw attention to the subject. But then you get people that turn that into a negative. So people that kind of just say, you're just trying to get your name in the paper, you're just trying to get your face on the telly and that kind of stuff. Which of course to a degree you are, because you want the subject to get into the mainstream media, and that's the purpose of doing it. You're trying to tell people, look, if you're struggling, this is what happened to my friend. And actually things like cycling and football were all useful tools to maybe coping a little bit better.
Yeah, well, they do say, Peter, there's a quote that I love, and it says that you will never ever be criticised by somebody who's doing more than you. You'll
Yeah,
only be criticised by somebody who's doing less. So
yeah.
I'd put them criticisms aside, mate. You're doing some amazing stuff. Please continue.
Well, that's kind of where it went from. We kind of labelled the campaign as Pete's Pedal to Paris to give it an identity, if you like. So we used that then before the cycle to go into schools locally, and we spoke to kids of age 14, 15, 16 to talk about facing pressure for the first time alongside the Wigan Warriors Foundation, who I was doing the cycle to raise money for. And the power of the Wigan Warriors badge, with people knowing that this worldwide Super League club allowed us to be able to get in the door and then talk about Pete's Pedal to Paris as an interesting topic, but then relate that to maybe 14, 15, 16-year-olds facing pressure in the form of exams for their first time. Something I don't remember particularly doing when we were at school, Gino. And just really trying to say, look, it's okay to find this period tough, but you are surrounded by lots of support networks. It's not always a charity or a stigma attached health solution. Sometimes it can just be that geography teacher that you get on with better than your mum and dad, or it could be that friend, you know what I mean, somebody else's mum and dad that you get on with. And just really pointing out that it's quite normal to find GCSE times probably the biggest first stretch you've had in your life, kind of thing. So we did some really good stuff up until the cycle. Then we went on the actual cycle, and I enjoyed the whole thing down through to London was probably the toughest bit. But then as soon as you hit,
How many miles is it, Peter?
I can't remember the exact now, but it was something like 5:10, I think, top of my head. We ended up at the same time as doing the cycle. I was going through the family court myself, so we ended up going not point to point. We went from Wigan to London, and then we had to stop and come back, and then we carried on again. So we missed London to New Haven, which was a bit of a disappointing bit at the time. But as everybody said to me around me, they were kind of saying, "Look, you've done a massive journey here, and it's called Pete's Pedal to Paris, not Critics Pedal to Paris kind of thing." So it's whatever your journey was kind of thing. So, like I said, it was a bit of a shame to come back, but we'd done, like I said, DW to Wembley over the first stretch, and then, like I said, I was going through the family court, so we were backwards and dealing with that, and then went back down and jumped on the ferry, which the FDS donated nicely to us, so I appreciate that. And then we got into France and got on something called the Avenue Vert, which is basically an old train line between London and Paris, which they've now concreted over. And for most of the journey to Paris, it's like just cycling on a velodrome track. It's beautiful. It's picturesque scenery either side, French architecture, like little gingerbread houses, and it's amazing. Castles and forts, and it's a really interesting cycle. If I was going to do it again now, that would be definitely the part that I'd recommend doing the London to bit. It was the most picturesque bit, and then of course you start reaching.
I think it helps you connect to your source, doesn't it? When you
Well, all the way through that, I was listening to music, and my friend wasn't far away from my thoughts. And like I said in the beginning, that place to place started as the cycle, where I was sorting my head out and coming to terms with it. And there were lots of times I was just cycling and crying for 20 miles or something. Do you know what I mean? And just thinking about memories and just, well, why is this person not here with us now? Like, you know, and the daft thing was one of the films that I watched just beforehand was The Martian with Matt Damon. So I downloaded the soundtrack from that. And anybody who's watched that film will know it's the worst soundtrack in the world. It's all like ABBA, Waterloo, and all this kind of disco music. So there's lots of shots of me kind of going through this French countryside listening to Mama. You know what I mean? So it was good for me. And by the time I got to Paris, obviously you had this epic moment then when you turn a corner and you see the Arc de Triomphe, or you see something that's like the Stade de France, and then the Eiffel Tower towards the end, and it was a great feeling. I can't tell you, just to have done that amount of mileage and then suddenly you're there. You've had this logo on your T-shirt for 2 years while you're going speaking in schools, and then suddenly you're there in front of this Eiffel Tower kind of thing, cycling in. and it was brilliant. My mum and dad and Nikki were there under the Eiffel Tower, and I literally past the Trocadero fountains, if anybody's familiar with it, and then just down right underneath the Eiffel Tower. So it was great, but it was very much about me. And when we got back, I tried to use them criticisms where people did say making it about me was a mistake to open it up. So we took the P2P, the Pete's Pedal to Paris, and we turned that into place to place. One thing that we did on the cycle we didn't set out to do to start with was we stopped at loads of stadiums. So there's lots of places where I was in Stoke with a picture, Warrington with a picture, Stoke with a picture, Coventry with a picture, Milton Keynes, and everything in the background was always a stadium, a football stadium. Wembley, as I mentioned, in London, the Stade de France.
I remember seeing them photos. Now you say that.
Yeah, and it just became this thing that we did. We just stopped at the stadiums at whatever town we were stopping at for that moment and took a picture. And then we realised that that's actually a good analogy to bring people together if we're going to look at opening the messaging out about mental health. That actually playing football, maybe looking after them 4 or 5 people in your team, rather than trying to change a whole country's opinion on mental health. If we all just looked after 4 or 5 people a little bit more than we do, maybe we'd all be a little bit better, kind of thing. And it's gone from strength to strength from there, really. We started with 5 lads that we did that with. I was playing in the team with 4 other lads, and then that went to 2 teams, and then 2 teams to 3 teams. We ended up at 6 teams while we were playing at a commercial place called the Soccer Dome. And then that shut down, so we had to make a quick decision on what we were going to do. So we moved from the Soccer Dome to a more kind of central location for the borough at Goose Green. So we're kind of in between Ashton and Wigan, and it worked out quite perfect then for people to get to. So then we slowly crept up to 8 teams, 10 teams, and then we're on 12 teams at the moment. And the basis is just, the other thing we ask the lads to do is just bear in mind that somebody you're playing with isn't just there to come down and win at all costs, kind of thing. It's about having a place to go after that really rough time. And we've had people that have literally been on the brink of suicide that have then come down to football as a kind of, right, well, I'll try this as a last thing, but if this doesn't work, it's not good for me. And then we've managed to retain them people and help them out and signpost them to some proper support.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Pete, because talking is a great way of releasing the energy that has built up. You're providing an outlet to a thing that most lads like anyway, which is football. Then you're providing an outlet where these people can discuss things that are bothering them internally with a support network. It's an amazing thing. It really is.
I think that's the biggest surprise we've had is just how much people have got going on. When we first started it, we were kind of very much with our friend in our mind, so we're kind of talking about suicide and feelings of depression and anxiety. But then we've literally had we had a guy that was applying for asylum, escaping Vladimir Putin's regime. We've had people from different kind of like baby loss backgrounds, dads that have lost children at very young ages or during childbirth, and all focus has been on mum and rightly so, kind of thing, during that period. But there's still a fella at the other side of that who's watching his wife lose the child and all the feelings of guilt and not being able to help and all them kind of things. More recently, we've had some people talk about gambling issues, which has been a new thing. And again, it's a bit of a kind of slow burner, if you like, because a lot of people will say at first, they'll make sweeping remarks saying, "Oh, he's only here because of the football, and he's just here because Soccer Dome isn't open, etc." And then out of the blue, that person that they're talking about, unprompted, will just say, "Well, actually, I've been struggling with this," and then suddenly the barrier comes down, and you're going like, "All right, okay, that's what that person's had." But again, before that point, there's no sign of that because you don't really kind of go out and shout about it. You don't.
That's exactly right, mate. It's easy to forget that you never know what somebody might be dealing with in their personal lives.
Yeah.
The idea, mate, is just be nice. Just be nice to people, isn't it? You know.
And just by having that group as well, like I say, we've got some lads that have come down from situations where they maybe moved to the borough and they don't know a lot of people, so they haven't gone through like me knowing yourself. They're not going to bump into that friend at Asda that they used to go to school with, because they're not grown up round here, like, you know. So we've got people like that now. We've got 4 or 5 people in a football team that now suddenly, when they do go to the local supermarket, it's not only just about while they're at football. They might see that lad from football and that lad who was talking to them about their common problem the other week, and then maybe that conversation starts again at Asda or wherever else, like, you know. So we've definitely had a bit of that. We know it's quite hard to judge sometimes where the success stories are, because they don't always happen right in front of your eyes. But
yeah, that's right, mate. Yeah, that's right.
We tend to find out afterwards. There was another example where a guy switched jobs, which I didn't know about till about 6 months afterwards. But that came from a conversation at football, and he'd gone from being in a sports role, a very particular sports role involved in the Super League, and then switched to become a driver in a logistics company. And he said afterwards, like, obviously that switch was crucial for me because I'm on reasonable money in my role here, and I've got reasonable bills as a result of it, because you live to how much you earn, kind of thing. And if I hadn't made that switch quickly, things could have got a bit tough, like, you know. So again, it's a preventative thing as well, more than anything. It's not that person was really struggling with anything maybe when they came down, but obviously being part of, like we said, support networks has really paid off for that person.
Oh yeah, prevention is better than cure, mate, as they say, don't they? Prevention is
Yeah.
better than cure. So that's how it all came into existence, which is a pretty inspirational story, to be honest. So how now are you looking to spread this concept into other groups? What's your ideas on that?
So we've always been quite keen to say that we're not going to just do place to place, Manchester, place to place, Liverpool, place to place. It's not something that was going to spread across the country and we're going to kind of franchise it or anything like that. It was a case of we set out to improve things like suicide figures in Wigan, and we definitely are having an impact on that every week now, and every month we're having conversations with different people. We're definitely achieving what we set up to do. In the last 12 months, we got a bit of recognition for that, which involved then Man United kind of realising what we were doing a little bit. And on the back of Daniel James came down from Man United and he retweeted something, started having all these international conversations, because the power of the Man United badge, you don't realise how big it is until you've been kind of like touched by it. Because I was in a hotel room waiting to do BBC Breakfast to talk about place to place, and Dan James retweeted something for the first time, and my phone just went berserk. Every 15 seconds for the next 24 hours was just likes, tweets, comments, requests, direct messages, and it was literally every 15 seconds. So it was just ding, ding, ding. You know what I mean? It was crazy. And we found that we would talk to people in the Philippines, we talk to people in Australia, across, like I say, Europe, Italy, Spain, people in Africa, America. So it kind of just stimulated an idea that just more of a bit of a challenge to show the lads how far that reaches. Because I got to see that firsthand, but the lads that play in the club didn't really see it. So we started thinking about ways that how could we do something place to place that kind of shows the lads how far it's kind of reaching out, really, and how far that message is reaching out. So we decided we'd try and use some of our old shirts. Generally, year on year, we're getting a sponsor at the moment, so we replace shirts and we end up with a stock of old shirts. So we want to try and send them shirts around the world, really, and see if we can do what we did in Wigan and just start a conversation about mental health. It might not be as easy to do in other places, but I'm sure that New York or Melbourne has still got mental health issues for fellas, and I'm sure that fellas do the same things that we do here. I don't think it's just a British thing.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
So that's the idea, really. Is we want to try and get a place-to-place game across the continents, really. So it's quite a tough ask, I think, to try and get a five-a-side game, a place-to-place five-a-side game in all of the continents. But we thought if we can do that and show the lads how far the reach has been, it's a bit of fun as well. It's interesting something to be working on as we tick through this kind of weird time as well. Like, it looks like possibly going to go into another kind of lockdown. We're on all sorts of things apart from football. The lads are using daily exercise challenges to cycle around all the European stadiums. It would have been the European Football Championships this summer, but for COVID, obviously. So they've been, every time they've been cycling or they've been out jogging or they've been walking for the day, they've been kind of accumulating all that data and all their miles. And so far they've done something like 6,000 miles around Europe, kind of thing. So they're on with all them things now, kind of automatically. So we just thought we'd again just try and keep reaching out to people and see if we could do this. Really, just again maybe a bit selfishly, it's a bit of a challenge for me, but
I know you're doing a good thing. So if anybody from who's watching today on the channel, Peter, is interested in starting this conversation, having a place-to-place set up in their local communities, obviously they need to get in touch with you, and you'll take it from there. So I'll put your contact details at the bottom of the screen right now. But what will it look like? So these people contact you, and then you're going to send them kit. It's not going to cost them anything or anything.
No cost. It's a kind of, call it a social experiment. I don't know. We're going to send kind of 5-7 kits out to you, just the shirts, place to place logos on it, things like that. And the challenge then is really to with that kit go and try and start a conversation about men's mental health using football, and then show us what that looks like. Kind of document what you're doing, take some photographs, take some videos. If you can stream it, brilliant. We just kind of, it's over to you guys really. In the other countries, it's just a case of we want to see loads of unique locations. The world's a very diverse, different place. So
certainly is, my friend.
Literally, we're going to try and go place to place. So if you forgive the analogy, and let's see what we can do.
Yeah, it sounds good. So to wrap up, if anybody's interested who's watching, get in touch with Peter. I'll flash them contact details again. Peter, it's been a pleasure having you on the channel. If you want to say goodbye to the viewers, then go ahead, my friend.
So just thanks for everybody for tuning in and listening to what we've been talking about. It's really important. Fellas don't talk enough about the mental health. So please speak to the people around you if you're struggling with anything. And then get in touch, like I say, if you fancy a game of football and you fancy being part of this bizarre conversation, feel free to get in touch and we'll try and help you out.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording, Pete, and then we'll have a chat after, yeah?